This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the NEGOTIATEx podcast. I am your co-host and co-founder, Nolan Martin, and with me today is my good friend, co-founder, co-host, everything above, Aram Donigian. Aram, how are you doing today?
I'm good. The year off to a good start for you, Nolan?
Yep, it is. It's gonna have to be better than 2021. I think we've all had enough of 2021, so here's to staying positive for 2022.
We said that about 2022, so hopefully we're on an upward trajectory. So we'll see.
Yeah, how's everything going for you and the family?
We're good. We're enjoying a beautiful winter up in New Hampshire.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, we had a very warm December, but it's definitely starting to feel more like winter here in Virginia, DC area as we roll into January. Today, we have another question from our listeners. And so Aram and I, these are definitely our favorite questions, our favorite episodes, because it's not us coming up with the material. We got to figure out what issues you are having and try and solve those. And that's always a lot more fun than us just trying to figure out what to talk about. And I think it's more exciting for you as well. But today's question is, how might we approach a negotiation when there's little time to plan and prepare? Aram, over to you, sir.
Yeah, we would all love to think that never happens, that we're all going to have just the right amount of time to get well prepared and to have this whole thing planned out. And oftentimes that doesn't happen. Now, we want to make sure it's not happening because we haven't kicked the can and we actually could have anticipated this negotiation. We knew it was coming. We just chose not to get well prepared. That's fundamentally different, right? That's being a very lazy negotiator. And we need to go back and say, we knew this was coming and we could have gotten well prepared. I often remember some senior folks we've worked with before when asked, well, how much time do you spend preparing? They said, well, how long does it take to get from my office to my counterpart's office, right? Which, if it's a flight from New York to Beijing, great. That's going to be you're going to probably be well prepared. If it's around the corner, well, you're not going to be nearly as well prepared. So I like to make sure that we're really talking about the real thing, which is this is something I didn't anticipate. This is an opportunity that came down. This is not a routine sort of negotiation with a supplier that we commonly work with. Therefore, it's a what we would call in the military, a target of opportunity, and we need to seize on the moment. Time truly is of the essence, and we need to execute. And so that's more kind of my thinking on this. We got to make sure that it really kind of fits that bill.
And I think that's kind of the first thing we need to figure out in this is it a time sensitive target? I mean, do we really only have a little bit of time? Or as we've talked about before, Aram, do we have the ability to negotiate for more time?
Right. And because we've talked about, tactics that people use. Best time to buy a car is typically at the end of a quarter, end of the year, people trying to make right. And people,
unless you talk to a salesman, then the best time to buy a car is right then.
Right. The folks we're working with have drivers. They know we have drivers. We know that time does factor into negotiations. We just want to be careful that it's not a manipulation tactic. Guard against that. And so what you're saying, I think, is a great one, right? We don't always negotiate just to get to a signed deal. Sometimes you negotiate to extend the amount of time you have that we can reach a good decision. Sometimes we need to negotiate for more information so that we can reach a good decision over time. We need to negotiate maybe to escalate this through internal channels for both of us, and so that we can get more permissions to be able to negotiate more broadly than what we have right now. I mean, there can be any number of reasons that somebody negotiates. Checking the time assumption is a really good one. Make sure it's not being used as a manipulation tactic, against you.
Yeah, I think, last episode we had talked about taking the time, finding the time to get more creative, unfettered brainstorming of options. And so maybe that's something that we also need to explore here is, hey, is it going to be more advantageous if maybe we get a few more people to generate just a few more options so that we make sure that we are coming up with the best outcome at the end of the day? So I think that's definitely applicable here when we talk about time.
Yeah, it is. I tend to tell folks, if this, okay, what's the nature? Let's talk urgency here. So what's the nature of the urgent the negotiation? If this is an urgent negotiation and it is coming up because there is either damage or potential damage to relationship, or there's confusion about something because of poor communication, heck, we need to focus on those things first and set aside any sort of substantive solutions, because we need to deal with perceptions, we need to deal with trust. Okay, so that comes to understanding the essence of the negotiation. If it, though, to kind of your point, Nolan, is around the substance and we really are under time, then we coach folks to kind of focus on what we call those in the circle elements. And those are things that, as I'm bumping along, or in a Humvee, I'm thinking about, but as we are like reacting to the moment, say, what are the interests? What are my fears, needs, concerns, motivations I'm trying to satisfy right now? That this is a target of opportunity. That's why I'm seizing it, right? What are my interests? Am I really clear on those? To your point, what are some different ways we can solve that? By the way, I can text, 5 people. They don't need to be in the room. I can send a text real quickly. Hey, got an opportunity here. Here's what I think we're concerned about. Any suggestions, any ideas? And I can do that very quickly and try to harness that multiple perspective, brain power, right away. And then what are the criteria? How do we know that this is something fair and legitimate? Because even in the moment, I'm going to have to come back with something that's fair, reasonable, defendable. So I'm going to need some sort of standard of legitimacy. Do I have one? Can I get one? Can I invite one from the other side right away? How did you come up with that? This seems like a really good idea. How do we know this is fair and defendable? And then the last one is, I just want to do a quick reality check with my BATNA and say, well, before I jump in, because boy, I'm excited. That's what, right. That's, I'm allowing myself to be driven by time. Reality check. What happens if I don't agree? What happens if I let the time pass and we've missed this opportunity? Am I really in as bad a shape as I'm assuming I might be? Right. Let me really check what my BATNA might be to walk away and go do something else, or even my BATNA being, let's wait. Let's just wait and see what happens.
And as we talk about this, I just have like vivid memories. I used to be what was called an observer coach trainer at JRTC at Fort Polk, Louisiana. If you live anywhere near Fort Polk, Louisiana, I am so sorry, because that was a long 4 years of being like next to nothing. Anyways, I remember, there's always just continuous missions that the unit that's going through this training always has to um, keep planning for, to be able to have a plan so that when the time came down to it, they have something to go off, right? And so in the military, we have this thing called the military decision making process, and generally the executive officer, so the number two in command for an organization, he or she controls the military decision making process. And so it's a bunch of steps that the staff is essentially going to work through until they end up with the plan of how they're going to accomplish this, right? And in that process, the XO has the ability to expedite certain areas, maybe slow down other areas. And it basically all comes down to how much risk do they want to take during the plan that they're creating, right? If you don't consider the enemy, then that's a big risk, because the enemy's always going to have a vote. And so if you decide to overlook that part of the plan, it may not go that well for you. And I think that's kind of the same thing that we're seeing here, is if you are time constrained, you've really got to focus on where your risks are and make sure that you at least think through that process if you're going to, you know, look over some of the other steps, glaze over some of the other steps to really get to an outcome, if it is truly a time sensitive negotiation. How's that sound? Is that inaccurate?
Well, yeah, it's really accurate. And let's just use this as an opportunity, kind of a springboard here to talk about risk, because a lot of people will say, well, if there's any risk involved at all, well, then I shouldn't do it. And I would caution us to maybe just say, let's shift that thinking a little bit. And if we can do what you're saying, hey, this is a great opportunity. And to meet it, we're going to have to streamline things. We still want to remain disciplined. Let's not just pretend like those risks don't exist. Let's talk about risks in a couple of ways, though. Let's first of all talk about risks in terms of what is the probability that they're going to occur. Because even if it's like, well, that's a risk, yep, and it's got a really little probability of occurring. Okay, and what's the magnitude? If it happens, is it hitting? Is it hitting the news line uh, tomorrow, or not? Right? Is it not a headline sort of event? Is it not catastrophic to us and to our business and everything else? So probability and magnitude first. And then with that in mind, and as we're getting into options saying, hey, well, we do have some concerns. How do we develop solutions around things to mitigate and manage risk, and both with regards to probability and magnitude? What can I do? What could you do? What requests could I make of you to help with the risk management piece? What could we do together? How do we pool our collective resources? Now, all of a sudden, between what you, and we can do with regards to both probability and magnitude, we come up with 6 ways, right? Do the math: 2 times 6, 2 times 3, 6. So six things we can discuss to manage what is potentially a huge concern, interest around time and moving quickly, that can help generate better ssolutions, and still allow us to maybe move forward, given the opportunity we see.
Yeah. And I think that's huge, is just really evaluating the risk and not necessarily being so risk adverse that you're not willing to potentially go through with something. I think that's huge there. I think this kind of goes back to, if I were advising anyone or I was going into a hasty negotiation, there is one tool that I would bring with me, and I would at least make sure that I spend enough time thinking through it, even if I don't have enough time to write everything down. And that's the NEGOTIATEx prep tool. Bunch of different names throughout the negotiating world, but this is a tool where you can organize your thoughts, and it's going to help you really think through the risks that you may not be seeing just by through initially brainstorming this negotiation, right? So I think that's just huge, to at least be able to think through all of the steps and truly identify where that risk is. Is there anything else that's helpful there, Aram?
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. I think that the only other 2 things I might add to the idea of getting, still brainstorming, even if it's kind of streamlined, or getting prepared, even if it's streamlined, would be one, you're going to be able to respond to time much better if you've had the opportunity, whether it's with the external party, maybe perhaps that this negotiation is with, to have addressed relationship and built trust and rapport over time. If that exists, then the ability to negotiate under great time pressures is that much greater. And if it's a new external relationship, but your internal dynamics are really well oiled, right? Because you've invested in the relationships there, and there is trust and understanding and good protocols in place, well, you're also going to be able to execute really well. And so, I'd like to think of the idea that I can be preemptively prepared for opportunity when both relationship but also the management of my processes, good communication, are well established beforehand.
Yeah, I think all of those are extremely important and something that's not going to happen overnight. So, um, making sure you're taking the proactive steps to get there with your team, with your counterparts, is something you got to focus on. Anything else we want to cover for this, Aaron?
I'm just going to throw out one of my favorite quotes, because as you're talking just now, you made me think of it. Louis Pasteur said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." So the more preparation you can already carry with you, whether that is preparation around what the issue is going to be, or preparation in terms of, the dynamics of the situation in which you're negotiating, or the way in which you're going to walk into the negotiation, even when it's just a pop-up negotiation, you will be more successful. And if your mindset has been kind of honed and trained and developed before you ever get into that situation.
I think that's an awesome quote, and I love it every single time you share it. Now, I think that this is a good part for us to put a plug in, and that's for the Negotiate Pro member-only side of our website that's coming out on 1 March. We're going to have a webinar on February 22nd at noon Eastern. You can sign up for that if you go to negotiatex.com/webinar. Now, I think with NegotiateX, like Aram and I are experts on the process of negotiations, right? Using tools to help you formulate your expert opinion in your industry and your business so that you can overcome the problems that you may encounter. And so with that, we've developed a pro side, member side of the website where we're going to have tools. You're going to have, monthly access to Aram and I through webinars, Q&A sessions, forums where you'll be able to interact with anyone else who may be having issues with negotiations, or, it's like a mastermind group for like-minded individuals. All this is going to live on the pro side, the member-only side of the website. And so we'll discuss this and more February 22nd. So again, if you go to negotiatex.com/webinar, it's a free webinar. You can sign up and we can dig a little bit more into this, and you'll be able to ask any questions that you may be having in your business, and we'll be answering them on the fly. With that, this is a podcast that is all about taking action in your business, in your life. So, Aram, what action items do we have for our listeners from today's episode?
Sure. Time is a real factor in negotiations. You're going to have some things that pop up in the world in which we live, because we're not living in a static world, but a very kind of diverse and engaging world. So we got to be able to respond well to time constraints. Time should not drive us to reverting back to bad behaviors. Rather, we should stay disciplined. We need to be able to identify the nature of problems and still prepare where appropriate to address, even when under tight time constraints. And we are going to have to be aware of assumptions we're making, especially regarding risk. And rather than just being risk adverse, if we can have those discussions in the moment and really break down risk into these two different components of probability and magnitude, we can find, up to 6 different kind of ways to have that conversation with our counterpart around what we can do, what they can do, and what we can do together to address those things.
Yeah, and I think having the NegotiateX prep tool in your notebook, if you have one, if you're still old school and carry a notebook, to have it inside of this, so that if you're ever in a time constrained negotiation, you have the ability to at least look at the prep tool where you can think through all the different aspects of the negotiation that we highly advise you think through. And as Aram said, you'll be able to identify where the risks may be. And at the end of the day, you're the leader who gets paid the big bucks to identify those risks and come up with creative solutions. So again, that's just a tool to help you do that. So appreciate you listening to today's episode. Aram and I are very thankful that you are still here, you're still listening, and we definitely appreciate it. Come join us February 22nd at noon Eastern. And again, you can sign up at negotiatex.com/webinar. Appreciate it, and we'll see you over in the next episode. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NegotiateX TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.